Inside Alaska State Prison. The cold in Alaska doesn't just bite, it erases. Out here, miles away from the nearest town, where temperatures fall far below zero and darkness can last for weeks, stands one of the most isolated prison systems in America. No crowds. No noise. No escape. And inside these walls, survival isn't just about avoiding violence. It's about enduring something far worse. Because in Alaska State Prison, the environment itself becomes part of the punishment. And what happens behind these walls, most people never hear about.
Before we dive into today's powerful story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support helps us keep sharing these stories, and we wouldn't want you to miss any of the action. Now, let's get started.
The edge of the world. The main prison system in Alaska is spread across multiple facilities, but one of the most notorious is the Anchorage Correctional Complex. Built to house hundreds of inmates in one of the harshest climates in the United States, it operates under conditions that few other prisons in the country can even compare to. The isolation alone changes everything. Unlike prisons in densely populated states, Alaska's correctional facilities are often separated by vast distances. Some inmates are flown in from remote villages. Others arrive after committing crimes in cities like Anchorage or Fairbanks. But once they enter, the outside world disappears almost instantly. No quick visits. No easy transfers. No sense of connection. Just cold, steel, and time. And what many don't realize is that the environment outside begins to shape what happens inside. Because when you're locked in a place where winter dominates most of the year, tension builds differently. And that tension finds ways to surface. First day inside. The first day inside Alaska State Prison is quiet, but not in a comforting way. It's the kind of silence that feels heavy. New inmates are processed through intake. Fingerprints. Mugshots. Medical checks. But what stands out isn't the procedure. It's the atmosphere. Everyone seems to already know something that the new arrivals don't. Because in this prison, there are rules that aren't written down. And breaking them can cost more than just privileges. After intake, inmates are assigned housing units. Some go to general population. Others, to segregation. And the difference between the two can define their entire sentence. But even in general population, there's an unspoken hierarchy. And if you don't understand it early, you learn the hard way. The hierarchy. Alaska's prison population is unique. A significant number of inmates are Alaska natives, alongside others from different backgrounds and regions. And while official policy discourages grouping or segregation, reality inside tells a different story. Inmates form alliances. Not always by race, but often by shared origin, language, or history. These groups control influence. Who gets protection? Who gets access to certain areas? Who eats in peace? And who doesn't? At the top of this structure are inmates who've spent years inside. They understand the system, the officers, and the rhythms of the prison. They don't need to be loud. Their presence alone is enough. Below them are those trying to survive. And at the bottom are the ones who don't yet realize where they stand. New inmates are watched carefully. How they walk. How they speak. Who they associate with. Because one wrong move can place them in a position that's almost impossible to escape. And in a place where isolation already weighs heavily on the mind, being alone inside is one of the most dangerous things you can be. Daily life in the cold. The day starts early. Usually around 5:30 or 6 a.m. lights come on whether you're ready or not. Breakfast is served shortly after. Basic meals. Nothing elaborate. But even here, small details matter. Where you sit. Who you sit with. Whether you eat quickly or take your time. Because every movement is noticed. After meals, inmates are assigned to different routines. Some work jobs inside the facility. Kitchen duty. Cleaning. Maintenance. Others remain in the unit, filling time however they can. Reading. Writing. Exercising. Or simply, waiting. Because time inside Alaska State Prison moves differently. The long winters, limited daylight, and restricted movement create a sense of stillness that can feel endless. And that stillness can become overwhelming. Some inmates say it's not the confinement that breaks people. It's the monotony. Day after day, the same walls, the same faces, the same cold air filtering through the system. And eventually, something inside starts to shift. The role of isolation. Segregation, or the hole, is where things become more intense. Inmates placed here spend up to 23 hours a day in their cells. Minimal human contact. Minimal stimulation. Just silence and thought. In Alaska, the psychological impact of isolation can be even stronger. Because outside the walls, the environment is already extreme. Combine that with internal isolation, and the effects multiply. Some inmates begin to lose track of time. Others develop routines just to stay mentally stable. Counting steps, repeating phrases, staring at the same spot on the wall for hours. And then there are those who don't adapt, who begin to unravel. But what leads someone to segregation in the first place? Sometimes it's violence. Sometimes it's defiance. And sometimes it's simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But once you're there, getting out isn't always straightforward. Violence, rare, but intense. Compared to larger prison systems in the lower 48 states, Alaska doesn't see constant violence. But when it happens, it's calculated, quick, and often severe. Because in a smaller population, conflicts are more personal. There's less anonymity. People remember. And grudges don't fade easily in a place where you see the same faces every day. Fights usually don't start randomly. They build. Through small moments. Disrespect. Miscommunication. Territory. Until one day, something snaps. And when it does, there's no crowd to disappear into. No chaos to hide behind. Just direct confrontation. And consequences that follow immediately. Sometimes from inmates. Sometimes from staff. And sometimes, from both. The officers. Officers in Alaska State Prison operate under conditions that are just as challenging as the inmates face. Long shifts. Limited staff. And the same environmental pressures. Many officers develop a strict, no-nonsense approach. Not out of hostility, but necessity. Because in a facility where resources are stretched and backup isn't always immediate, control must be maintained at all times. But relationships between officers and inmates are complex. Some interactions are purely professional. Others, more personal. And in certain cases, lines begin to blur. Trust can form in unexpected ways. But so can tension. And when that balance shifts, it can change the entire atmosphere of a unit. Because in a place like this, authority isn't just enforced. It's constantly tested. Survival rules. Survival in Alaska State Prison isn't about strength alone. It's about awareness. Knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Knowing who to trust and who to avoid. And understanding that every action has a ripple effect. Simple mistakes can carry weight. Taking something that isn't yours. Sitting in the wrong place. Asking the wrong question. These aren't just minor issues. They can escalate quickly. Experienced inmates often follow a set of unwritten rules. Keep your head down. Respect boundaries. Don't get involved in conflicts that aren't yours. And most importantly, don't draw unnecessary attention. Because attention, in here, is rarely a good thing. The mental toll. Over time, the mental impact of Alaska State Prison becomes impossible to ignore. The isolation. The monotony. The environment. All of it combines into something that slowly wears people down. Some inmates cope through routine. Others through faith. Some through writing letters, even if they never get a reply. But not everyone finds a way to manage it. Depression becomes common. Anxiety builds. And the sense of being cut off from the world becomes overwhelming. Because here, it's not just about serving time. It's about enduring a place where time feels like it's standing still. And that feeling can be harder to survive than anything physical. What happens next? For some inmates, release eventually comes. A return to the outside world. But even that isn't simple. Because after spending years in an environment like this, adjusting back can be just as difficult as surviving inside. And for others, there is no release. Just more time. More winters. More days that blend into each other. And more moments spent wondering how much longer they can endure it. Because in Alaska State Prison, the sentence isn't just measured in years. It's measured in what the environment takes from you. Piece by piece. Day by day. From the outside, it's just another correctional facility. Concrete walls. Barbed wire. Guard towers. But inside, it's something else entirely. A place where isolation isn't just physical. Where silence can be louder than noise. And where survival depends on more than just following rules. Because here, the cold never leaves. And neither do the things it does to people. And maybe the real question isn't how inmates survive inside Alaska State Prison. But what parts of them don't make it out. Transfers and the disappearing inmate. In most prison systems, transfers happen by road. In Alaska, they happen by air. Some inmates are moved hundreds of miles across frozen terrain, flown between facilities that are separated not just by distance, but by environment. A transfer here doesn't feel like a routine relocation. It feels like being erased and reinserted somewhere completely unfamiliar. Different unit. Different inmates. Different power structure. And sometimes, different rules altogether. For inmates coming from small, rural facilities into larger complexes like Anchorage, the shift can be overwhelming. Suddenly, they're surrounded by people they don't know. People who are watching them, measuring them, trying to figure out exactly who they are and where they fit. And in Alaska, where reputation travels slowly but sticks permanently, arriving without one can be dangerous. But what's even more unsettling is that sometimes transfers aren't explained. No warning, no reason given, just a name called and a bag packed. And by the time anyone notices, that inmate is already gone. The informal economy. Inside Alaska State Prison, money doesn't move the way it does outside. There are no cash transactions, no wallets, no physical currency. But that doesn't mean there isn't an economy. There is. And it runs quietly, beneath the surface. Commissary items become currency. Instant noodles, coffee, packets of sugar. Even something as small as a bar of soap can hold value. Trades are negotiated in low voices. Debts are tracked mentally. And payments are expected on time. Because in here, owing someone isn't just inconvenient. It's risky. Some inmates build influence through this system. They lend items. They facilitate trades. They control access. But with that influence comes attention. And attention, as always, can lead to problems. Because when something goes wrong in this underground economy, it rarely stays small. Food, control, and conflict. Food inside Alaska State Prison is basic. Standard portions. Standard menus. Designed for efficiency, not comfort. But even something as routine as a meal carries meaning. For some inmates, food becomes one of the few things they can control. They trade for better items. They save portions. They build small routines around eating, just to create a sense of normalcy. But food can also become a source of tension. Disputes over portions. Accusations of theft. Arguments over seating. And sometimes, something as simple as a missing item can trigger something much larger. Because when daily life is stripped down to the essentials, even the smallest disruption feels significant. And in an environment already under pressure, that significance can escalate quickly. The long night. Alaska's winters bring something that few other prison systems experience to this degree. Extended darkness. There are times when daylight barely appears, or disappears entirely for days. Inside the prison, artificial lighting continues as usual. But the absence of natural light changes perception. Inmates begin to lose track of time more easily. Sleep patterns shift. Energy levels drop. And the psychological weight of the darkness begins to settle in. Some describe it as a constant pressure. Others say it feels like the world outside has stopped existing. And inside these walls, that feeling becomes hard to shake. Because when you can't see the sun, it becomes harder to believe in anything beyond the moment you're in. Recreation, a controlled escape. Recreation time is limited. Structured. Controlled. In Alaska, outdoor recreation often depends on the weather. And when temperatures drop too low, or conditions become too severe, that time can be reduced or removed entirely. When inmates do get outside, it's not freedom. It's movement within boundaries. Walking in circles. Exercising in small groups. Breathing air that feels sharper, colder, heavier. For some, it's a break from the walls. For others, it's a reminder of how far removed they are from the outside world. Because even though they can feel the cold, they can't escape it. And eventually, they're brought back inside. Medical and mental health. Healthcare inside Alaska State Prison faces unique challenges. Limited staff. High demand. And an inmate population dealing with both physical and psychological strain. Basic medical needs are addressed. But delays can happen. Resources are stretched. And for inmates dealing with long-term conditions, the experience can be frustrating. Mental health services are also present. But the environment itself complicates everything. Isolation. Darkness. Confinement. All of it contributes to a level of stress that's difficult to fully manage. Some inmates seek help. Others avoid it. And some don't realize they need it until it's too late. Because mental decline here doesn't always happen suddenly. It builds. Quietly. Until it becomes impossible to ignore. Communication with the outside. Communication with the outside world is limited. Phone calls are monitored. Visits are restricted, and often difficult due to distance. For families living far from Anchorage, traveling to see an inmate isn't always possible. And letters become one of the most important connections. Handwritten messages that take days, sometimes weeks, to arrive. For many inmates, these letters are more than communication. They're reminders that life exists beyond the walls. That someone still remembers them. But not everyone receives letters. Not everyone gets visits. And for those inmates, the sense of isolation becomes even deeper. Because when the outside world stops reaching in, it starts to feel like it's gone entirely. Release, a different kind of challenge. Release from Alaska State Prison isn't always the relief people expect. After years inside, the outside world can feel unfamiliar, overwhelming, even threatening. Simple decisions become complicated. Daily routines disappear. And the structure that once felt restrictive is suddenly gone. For some, returning to society works. They rebuild. They adjust. But for others, the transition is difficult. Because the habits formed inside don't always translate to life outside. And the isolation they experienced doesn't always stay behind. It follows them in ways they didn't expect. Those who stay. Not everyone leaves. Some inmates spend decades inside Alaska's prison system, watching time pass, watching others come and go, becoming part of the structure itself. These individuals often hold a different kind of presence. They understand the system deeply. They've adapted to its rhythms. And in some cases, they've accepted it. But even for them, the environment never stops having an effect. Because no matter how long someone has been inside, the isolation, the cold, the repetition, never fully fades. Alaska State Prison doesn't rely on chaos to maintain control. It doesn't need constant violence or overwhelming force. Because the environment does something else entirely. It slows everything down. It isolates. It pressures. And over time, it changes people. Not all at once, but gradually. In ways that are difficult to see until they've already happened. And when someone finally leaves, the question isn't just what they experienced inside. It's what stayed with them. Because in a place like this, the sentence doesn't always end at the gate. Sometimes, it continues long after the cold is gone. If this story stayed with you, then you already understand, some places don't just lock people away, they change them. If you want more deep, real stories like this, stay with us. Because the next one might be even darker.